Hi, you guys. Welcome back to the Amani Talks podcast. You're here with your host, Amani, on the podcast where we discuss our Christian-based topics and deepening our relationship with the Lord. So I am back from the Dominican Republic, Santo Domingo, with my church for my first missions trip that I've ever attended. It was a great time. It was an eye-opening time. We got to really be in the community and really see the people that the church that we support and even other local organizations and other local churches, how they support their community, how they're building new churches. We got to be a part of the children's ministry. I will put a vlog up this Saturday if you guys want to, see how everything went. But it was a great time. Like I said, very educational, very eye-opening. Thank you for your prayers. We got there and back safely. It was truly an experience, and I would recommend that if any of you have the opportunity to go on a missions trip with your church and see the missionaries and see exactly what your church is funding, see firsthand what Christians around the world are doing, it's highly recommended. It was nothing short of life-changing. If you let it, it can be life-changing for you. And I truly got a real Dominican Republic experience this time around because last time I went 2 years ago, I went to Punta Cana for vacation. This time I was in Santo Domingo doing work, and y'all, no Wi-Fi at the Airbnb. The first day there was no AC in the room that 4 of us were sleeping in because there was like a lot of us in this house. Water pressure, like no hot water, like stuff like that, So I'm sorry that some uploads are missing because I didn't have Wi-Fi. It's not like America where you could just go anywhere and there's Wi-Fi just in the air on the street. I didn't even have Wi-Fi at the Airbnb, so I was unable to really upload. I had told you guys what I was going to do was a few days that I was out there, I'm just going to record it with my phone and just upload to YouTube from my phone. And I was unable to do that. So we're going to catch up today with chapters 14 and 15 of Proverbs because we are still doing our Proverb A challenge. One thing about y'all run a tight ship, okay? I had people DMing me like, what's wrong with you? Get back on YouTube. Like literally, no, how did your missions trip go? I hope you got back safe. I hope everything went well. We miss you. None of that. Y'all was like, get back on YouTube, Buki. But I appreciate that because, listen, it's accountability and it's very much needed. I love y'all. We're going to get back into Proverbs a day today. We're going to double up on chapters today and tomorrow, and then we'll be caught up by, today's Thursday, Friday, we'll be caught up by Saturday. Okay, let's get into reading Proverbs 14. The wise woman builds her house, but the foolish pulls it down with her hands. He who walks in his uprightness fears the Lord, but he who is perverse in his ways despises him. In the mouth of a fool is a rod of pride, but the lips of the wise will preserve them. Where no oxen are, the trough is clean, but much increase comes by the strength of an ox. A faithful witness does not lie, but a false witness will utter lies. A scoffer seeks wisdom and does not find it, but knowledge is easy to him who understands. Go from the presence of a foolish man when you do not perceive in him the lips of knowledge. The wisdom of the prudent is to understand his way, but the folly of fools is deceit. Fools mock at sin, but among the upright there is favor. The heart knows its own bitterness, and a stranger does not share its joy. The house of the wicked will be overthrown, but the tent of the upright will flourish. There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. Even in laughter the heart may sorrow, and the end of mirth may be grief. But the backslider in heart will be filled with his own ways, but a good man will be satisfied from above. The simple believes every word, but the prudent considers well his steps. A wise man fears and departs from evil, but a fool rages and is self-confident. A quick-tempered man acts foolishly, and a man of wicked intentions is hated. The simple inherit folly, but the prudent are crowned with knowledge. The evil will bow before the good, and the wicked at the gates of the righteous. The poor man is hated even by his own neighbor, but the rich has many friends. He who despises his neighbor sins, but he who has mercy on the poor, happy is he. Do they not go astray who devise evil? But mercy and truth belong to those who devise good. In all labor there is profit, but idle chatter leads only to poverty. The crown of the wise is their riches, but the foolishness of fools is folly. A true witness delivers souls, but a deceitful witness speaks lies. In the fear of the Lord there is strong confidence, and his children will have a place of refuge. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life, to turn one away from the snares of death. In a multitude of people is a king's honor, but in the lack of people is the downfall of a prince. He who is slow to wrath has great understanding, but he who is impulsive exalts folly. A sound heart is life to the body, but envy is rottenness to the bones. He who oppresses the poor reproaches his maker, but he who honors him has mercy on the needy. The wicked is banished in his wickedness, but the righteous has a refuge in his death. Wisdom rests in the heart of him who has understanding, but what is in the heart of fools is made known. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. The king's favor is toward a wise servant, but his wrath is against him who causes shame. So there's a lot that is said in Proverbs 14, continuing on in Solomon's wise sayings. There is a lot that you could pull from this. There are a few verses that stood out to me, things that definitely I've heard before, things that are repeated. Proverbs, you will get some repetition, but I'm okay with that because like we talked about before, we are hard-headed and need to hear it a few times to really get it through our skulls. So I will say that the verse that really stuck out to me that I'm going to discuss today is verse 20. The poor man is hated even by his own neighbor, but the rich has many friends. So when we're in Matthew 5, this is when Jesus is giving one of his famous sermons, right? He's up on the mountain, he's given a sermon, and these are the Beatitudes. The very first one that Jesus says, the very first words from this sermon are, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And that's the first thing I thought about when I was reading Proverbs 14:20. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And then another verse came to mind when I continued to read that verse. When we go to Matthew chapter 19, starting in verse 23, this is Jesus talking to his disciples, and it says, "Then Jesus said to his disciples, 'Assuredly I say to you that it is hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And again I say to you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God.'" So when Proverbs 14 is talking about that contrast between poor and rich, these verses in Matthew immediately came to mind because we know that it is hard for people that have money to depend on God. A lot of us count money as self-reliance, and if you are relying on yourself, you will never rely on God. And that's why Jesus said he recognizes it's hard for rich people to get into heaven because they think they have it all already. Why would I need God when I'm living such a great life on earth? I have money, I have resources, I have opportunities, I have comfort, I have things that most people don't, so I feel good about myself. You know, a lot of people say money doesn't buy happiness, and while that's true, money cannot literally buy happiness. Money makes us happy. Like, let's not act like it does not, because money makes you feel fulfilled. It gives you accessibility to a lot of things. You're not happy when you're constantly stressed about your bills, right? You're not happy when you can't buy the food that you want. You're not happy when you have kids and you can't pay for their college. There are a lot of things that do make you happy when you have money. Like, can it buy literal happiness? No, but it buys ease of mind. It buys, like we said, comfort. It buys a lot of opportunity. Point blank, period. And when you have those things, you do feel like, I don't need nobody but me and my money. So a lot of the times it is the rich on earth who are not following God. Think about all the celebrities. When we think about the 1%, they're not following God. They're playing right into the devil's hands of celebrity and being famous and people worshiping them and praising them instead of worshiping and praising God. That's all that is. So when I think about Proverbs 14:20 saying, "But the rich has many friends, while the poor, his own neighbors, hate him," that verse gives this depiction of the ungodly versus the godly. The world will hate Christians. If it does not already, it will. And just coming back from a place like Dominican Republic to where it is a very Christian nation, they're the only country in the world that has the Bible in their flag. So we were really privileged to be in a country that did not oppose Christians. We could walk out in the street very freely, and people were not only open to hearing us talk about Christ, but they invited us into their homes. Like literally, we were in people's houses and in their kitchens, and I felt like I'm imposing, like this would never happen in America. You go door knocking and randomly try to talk to people about Jesus in America, people are low-key giving you hostility. But getting back to what I was saying, this verse really reminded me of the godly versus the ungodly, and with the rich being the ungodly in this situation. And Proverbs is saying the rich have a lot of friends. It just makes me think about how sometimes we as Christians, it's hard to find Christian friends. I know it is for me, especially when you're newly saved or just now coming back to your relationship with God, and you have to give up a lot of the relationships that you had before. But the ungodly, they have a lot of friends because the world is their friend. So I want to just point that out, because if you're someone that maybe is in an isolation season right now, or just in general, you've never been one to really be able to hold on to friends as a Christian, make friends, it's not a foreign concept. It's not you. I truly do believe that when you are more worldly, you will have more approval from the world and you will have more friends. That just makes sense. Maturing is realizing that as a Christian, you won't always be the popular one. You're not going to be the one with the big friend group. You're not going to be the one that the world loves. In fact, if the world loves you, you're doing something wrong, because how could the world hate Jesus but love you and you're his follower? You're doing something wrong. The word tells us that the world hates us as Christians. And that just makes sense. The world opposes us. So if the rich has many friends, and Jesus tells us that it's hard for the rich to get into heaven, hard, darn near impossible for the rich on earth to make it into heaven, why should we follow in their footsteps? Why should we look like them? A lot of times you will have just a few close friends. Hopefully, if you plugged in your church and you're doing what you should be doing, maybe you make friends along the way in your ministry, you're serving in some capacity, you'll make some close friends if you're lucky, not if you're lucky. You guys know what I mean. You'll make some close friends maybe, but for a lot of Christians, we will never have that large friend group. A lot of us need that alone time. We need that solitary time with God for him to refine us. Some of us are too easily influenced by the people around us. That's why you won't have a lot of friends. Some of us are too easily influenced by the world. That's why you won't have a big friend group. You let anybody tell you anything. You're swayed too easily. That's why you won't have the big friend group. Sometimes God has to, get us by ourselves a little bit so that we can really recognize who we are in Christ before we go out into the world and try to make friends. So I really want to catch up from the few days that we skipped. So let's get into Proverbs 15. If you guys have a verse in Proverbs 14 that spoke to you, definitely drop it in the comments. We'll talk about it. But let's continue on so that we can catch up. The tongue of the wise uses knowledge rightly, but the mouth of fools pours forth foolishness. The eyes of the Lord are in every place, keeping watch on the evil and the good. A wholesome tongue is a tree of life, but the perverseness in it breaks the spirit. A fool despises his father's instruction, but he who receives correction is prudent. In the house of the righteous there is much treasure, but in the revenue of the wicked is trouble. The lips of the wise disperse knowledge, but the heart of the fool does not do so. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord, but the prayer of the upright is his delight. The way of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord, but he loves him who follows righteousness. Harsh discipline is for him who forsakes the way, and he who hates correction will die. Hell and destruction are before the Lord, so how much more the hearts of the sons of men? A scoffer does not love one who corrects him, nor will he go to the wise. A merry heart makes a cheerful countenance, but by sorrow of the heart the spirit is broken. The heart of him who has understanding seeks knowledge, but the mouth of fools feeds on foolishness. All the days of the afflicted are evil, but he who is of a merry heart has a continual feast. Better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure with trouble. Better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a fatted calf with hatred. A wrathful man stirs up strife, but he who is slow to anger allays contention. The way of the lazy man is like a hedge of thorns, but the way of the upright is a highway. A wise son makes a father glad, but a foolish man despises his mother. Folly is joy to him who is destitute of discernment, but a man of understanding walks uprightly. Without counsel, plans go awry, but in the multitude of counselors they are established. A man has joy by the answer of his mouth, and a word spoken in due season, how good it is. The way of life winds upward for the wise, but that he may turn away from the hell below. The Lord will destroy the house of the proud, but he will establish the boundary of the widow. The thoughts of the wicked are an abomination to the Lord, but the words of the pure are pleasant. He who is greedy for gain troubles his own house, but he who hates bribes will live. The heart of the righteous studies how to answer, but the mouth of the wicked pours forth evil. The Lord is far from the wicked, but he hears the prayer of the righteous. The light of the eyes rejoices the heart, and a good report makes the bones healthy. The ear that hears the rebuke of life will abide among the wise. He who disdains instruction despises his own soul, but he who heeds the rebuke gets understanding. The fear of the Lord is the instruction of wisdom, and before honor is humility. So right off the bat, I already know what verse speaks to me. I mean, there's a couple of them we're going to talk about, but right off the bat, beginning in chapter 15, verse 1, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Y'all, this is speaking to me, okay? I think I have told you all, and I'm sure that you have seen with your own eyes, I don't even got to tell you, that one of my personal struggles is not necessarily what I say, it's how I say it. One thing I've learned with my journey of just being public on social media and speaking is that you can have all the truth in the world. You can be right 100% of the time. But if you're not doing it with love, it means absolutely nothing. People are sensitive. They just are. People are emotional, they're sensitive, and a lot of times they accept and respond with emotion. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. The Lord created emotions. He made us to be people that take things in with our own personal experience, what we've learned, our own take on things, our own perspective, our own emotion. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's not how I'm wired, if I'm just being honest with you. But if I'm to be all things to all people, like Paul says, in order to be effective with teaching, winning over souls, discipling, giving people the gospel, if that's my job on this earth, then I should be appealing to most. And I've learned that my approach did not always appeal to most. There was always truth in it, but there was not softness in it. Because sometimes I kind of felt like people abused grace. I feel like we still do. I feel like Christians abuse grace. I think that Christianity, a lot of times, especially in America, is seen as a joke because Christians aren't really living out true Christ-like lives. And they do that under the pretense, under the notion of the Lord knows my heart. I can do this because God knows me. Who are you to judge? I'm living out my own salvation. His grace is sufficient for me. We live under grace, not by the law. A lot of Christians, they take that and they abuse it. And I see it so often. And even when we're not talking about Christianity, people in general abuse crutches. And just to be clear, I'm not calling God's grace a crutch whatsoever. But when you get out into the world, all of a sudden, everybody has a mental illness. When you try to give them a little bit of accountability, all of a sudden, people are talking about their trauma from their past. And while all those things can and are valid, people run to these emotional crutches. They run to these fake crutches. They self-diagnose themselves out of accountability. And I was just really frustrated with people lacking common sense and logic and 1 + 1 = 2. It just gets very frustrating to see people constantly dodging accountability and constantly dodging how Christ tells us to live under grace. People abuse grace. So I kind of felt like people don't need to hear grace from me. They are already getting it everywhere else and they're abusing it. People just need to hear the truth. And is that correct? Yes. But the word tells us that fruit of the Spirit, gentleness, self-control. And if I don't have those things, if I'm not speaking with love, then it means absolutely nothing. And when you read James, James is like the book of love. James is telling us how to be effective in love, that if we have love, if we don't have love, we have nothing. So if I'm not speaking in love, if I can't speak softly to people, not only am I speaking for absolutely nothing because it won't be effective, but I'm going directly against what God tells me to do and how he tells me to speak. So it has been a real learning lesson to try to really, if I have something that I want to say on social media, sometimes what I'll do is I'll do several drafts and then I'll go back and I'll say, okay, does this sound too harsh? Am I saying this softly enough? Am I saying it with enough effectiveness that people get the point, but I don't feel like I'm yelling at people? Because Proverbs is telling us that you're never going to get far with that approach. If you have truth but no love, it's worthless. If you have truth and you're not speaking it with softness, with humility, with gentleness, it's not going to be effective. So it's almost like practice softness, practice gentleness, practice speaking with love, or don't speak at all. It's like when your mom told you, if you don't got nothing nice to say, don't talk at all. If you can't say it with love and with gentleness and with kindness, don't say it at all. And that is something that I am learning every single day. It's so hard sometimes because people are knuckleheads, including myself. I'm not excluding myself from this. I'm not making myself above the average person. I'm just saying that we in general, we're knuckleheads. And sometimes it's like you got to knock on people's skulls to get them to understand. That's what it feels like sometimes. But that does not, first of all, sometimes when we're trying to drive points into people's heads and we're not saying it with gentleness, we're not saying it as soft as we can, that is us having a level of pride that we are able to convince people. And we talked about that already on another episode. We don't convince people of anything. Our job is to deliver the gospel with love, gentleness, kindness, utilizing the fruit of the Spirit. And that is what's going to draw people in and be effective. And the Lord does the rest. So when I am like, why don't you get it? Why don't you get it? That's pride coming from me. That I think that my words and my logic and the way that I see things are going to win people over. That's not true. Another verse that I liked was verse 16. Better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure with trouble. That reminds me of one of my favorite verses in 1 Peter or 1 Timothy. That talks about contentment with contentment with godliness is great gain. And I repeat that verse to myself all the time whenever I want to self-indulge, whenever I feel like, I want things, whenever I'm not happy in the moment that God has given me, every single breath that I take, whenever I'm not content with just that and I want more and more and more out of this life, out of this world. Jesus in Matthew talks against us storing up treasures on earth. Store up our treasures in heaven. And we know how we get treasures in heaven by doing God's work on earth. So, contentment with godliness is great gain. I try to just learn to be content with what God has given me, to not always want more, because that comes to your destruction too. You always want more. You're always going to be broke. You always want more. That comes with a level of pride too, because what do you want more for? To be better than somebody that has less? That's why we do the things that we do a lot of times. That's why we buy these fancy cars and wear designer clothing and stuff like that. Is to mark ourselves physically, to separate ourselves from most people that can't afford stuff like that, to make us feel better than. And when I was out in the world, I bought a lot of that stuff. That's why I drive the car that I drive now, and I have a lot of this stuff because I stored up treasure for myself when I was still living against God. And now, I still just have it. A lot of it I sell, a lot of it I'm just like, I don't even wear this stuff anymore. I'm selling it on Depop. By the way, follow my Depop. I'll put the link in the description box. But yeah, when I was out in the world, those things were important to me. And I remember even telling a friend, I was like, I haven't really felt the need to buy designer stuff anymore like that. I'm good with just whatever, I don't feel the itch to go buy a new bag or buy a new pair of shoes like I used to. I really came to realize that a lot of that stuff was just a form of pride for me. And as a Christian, I should not be buying designer things when I could be giving that money to people in need around the world, when I could be stewarding that money so much better than buying more designer for myself. If I get gifted it, that's one thing. But there is a lot of privilege that comes with the job that I do, where I live, the money that I had when I was working nightlife. And that privilege is not always necessarily a good thing. So, I'm truly getting over that. But yeah, verse 16 really spoke to me. Better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure with trouble. And then the last one that really spoke to me was verse 3. The eyes of the Lord are in every place, keeping watch on the evil and the good. I just like those reminders. I like those reminders of God is looking. He is watching. There's another verse, I think, in Psalm. I got to find it. But it talks about how the Lord watches. He's seeking us. His eyes are on the face of the earth. I think it was in Proverbs, one of the first chapters of Proverbs. But I just like that reminder that the Lord truly is watching me, even when I feel like he isn't, when I feel like I'm doing good for no reason. What is my reward on earth for doing good? The Lord is watching me. I'm storing up treasures in heaven, not treasure on earth. And that's what we should all be striving towards as Christians. So yeah, that's chapter 14 and 15. I am going to do 16 and 17 also to get us caught up on the next episode. Definitely drop those verses that stood out to you guys in the comments. Thank you guys for being patient with me with these uploads. I am definitely going to pre-record because I'm leaving for Bali today on my Christian girls trip. I'm going to just go ahead and pre-record a lot of episodes because I don't want the Wi-Fi situation to stop me again from uploading. I want to be consistent with you guys because I know that you guys are looking out for it. Hey, Phil, I didn't even see him come up here. But yeah, definitely I'm going to pre-record so that we can stay on track. So love you guys. I will see you tomorrow, and pray for me, pray for safety for the Christian girls trip. Just pray that we have a good time fellowshipping and traveling. And yeah, I'll see you guys later. Bye.